You guys might remember this. This was these detention centers that were first revealed back then in 2015. I mentioned this earlier in the show, black sites. So in the post 9/11 world, people were being kidnapped, what they got to call rendition, just the way they call torture, enhanced interrogation. Make no mistake, rendition was kidnapping people and taking them to black sites, to private prisons around the world, where many times they were never seen from again, or they would be tortured and abused for years and never charged with a crime. Well, in 2015, we learned about this situation. This is an article from the Anti-Media. Shout out to the Anti-Media. Going back to 2015, this was written by Carrie Wedler. Chicago police caught disappearing people into secret CIA-style detention center. Now, you guys might not remember this, but this was first reported by The Guardian. The Chicago police are operating detention facilities that mirror the CIA's black sites. According to The Guardian's investigation, the process at Homan is as follows. Suspects are taken to the facility without being booked or processed. And they say that this is a secret among the attorneys, where they regularly make police station visits. If you can't find a client in the system, odds are that they're in this Homan facility. They are interrogated without lawyers present, and in fact, lawyers are often refused entry. Those who have gained access to the clients claim that the police still withhold information about the suspects. They are not read their Miranda rights or offered due process, and they're essentially taken without any contact to the lawyers, and they're held in this facility in Chicago. This man, Brian Jacob Church, who was acquitted of terrorism charges after the 2012 NATO summit, he was held there. He's apparently the only detainee who spoke to The Guardian after fear of police retaliation. He said he was being held behind a floor to a ceiling chain link cage with his left wrist cuffed to the bench and ankles cuffed together for 17 hours. His lawyers were only able to find him after putting in calls to the mayor's office. And he said it brings to mind interrogation facilities they use in the Middle East. The CIA calls them black sites, a domestic black site. When you go in, no one knows what happened to you. This was the case of a 15-year-old boy who was taken to Homan under suspicion of involvement in a shooting. A sympathetic sergeant told his mother his location, but when the attorney arrived, she was denied entry for over an hour. She says officials told her, well, you can't just stand here taking notes. This is a secure facility. There are undercover officers and you're making people very nervous. The boy was not released until 12 or 13 hours later. He was not charged. And this is, you can kind of see the facility, the building, like people were able to locate where this was actually at. And, there's some video right there for those watching on the screen. It's in this giant nondescript warehouse. It looks sort of abandoned. You would never think that, oh my God, they're holding people in there, without charge, having them chained up against the wall. There's no sign that it has anything to do with anything. So that was back in 2015. Just for those who'd never heard of this, needed a refresher, the Anti-Media reported on it. I reported on it and how this ties into child abuse and in different facilities where, while they've got some people being held in Homan Square, they've also got these kids being held in these residential centers. So this was all covered in the past. So now here's the update from the Free Thought Project. DOJ knew about and used notorious Homan Square black site. It wasn't just Chicago police operating the off-the-books holding facility, the site of alleged torture and days-long unlawful detention. So again, we talked about this in 2015. But nobody was ever investigated. The Department of Justice under Obama and under Trump and under Biden, nobody has chosen to investigate this to find out what the heck the Chicago Police Department were up to. And more than likely, guys, these sort of facilities exist in other cities with other police departments. The DOJ's failure to specifically examine the alleged abuses at Homan left onlookers scratching their heads. Investigating the CPD's use of force was important. But why wouldn't the DOJ also investigate the Homan Square facility given the severity of the allegations? One of the main figures pushing for a DOJ probe was then Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin, who sent letters to the department asking them to investigate the facility. When he was asked whether he received an explanation as to why they did not investigate it, he said, "I did not," which is surprising. And this report is coming from Noir News. They've examined an element of this story that provides important context. The Department of Justice was inside Homan Square all along, well aware of its use for extrajudicial detention, conducted its own interrogations in the facility, and it's implicated in at least one of the most egregious abuse cases, that of Angel Perez. Perez alleged that Chicago officers took him to Homan Square and pressured him to act as a cooperating witness in an investigation of alleged drug dealer Dwayne Payne. Namely, the officers wanted Perez to set up a drug purchase with Payne. Perez said he was taken to a room on a second floor of Homan Square, handcuffed to a bar, and placed in ankle shackles for several hours. Officer allegedly threatened to plant evidence on him and send him to Cook County Jail to be raped by gang members. After he refused to cooperate in the investigation, he says that he was physically and verbally tortured by the officers for hours and that they refused to grant him access to a lawyer. One of the officers told Perez, "I hear that a big black N-word dick feels like a gun up your ass." Wow. Then an officer inserted a cold metal object, believed to be one of the officer's revolvers, into his rectum, causing him severe pain and humiliation. He relented and agreed to buy heroin for the officers. And importantly, his lawsuit and the Guardian's reporting on it solely implicated the CPD, but Noir News has discovered a 2022 court order reveals that the investigation that resulted in his detention and torture wasn't just the Chicago police, but it actually was a joint investigation with the U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney's Office is part of the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice, which never investigated this Homan Square domestic black site in Chicago, they were already a part of this prosecution of this guy, this crazy, forced him to go be an informant via the U.S. Attorney's Office. He was eventually charged alongside with other defendants, and as the DOJ announced in a 2013 press release, the DOJ's Department of Drug Enforcement Administration was also involved in the investigation. If his allegations are true, and surveillance footage shows him being released, shows him being escorted into Homan through a door titled prisoner entrance, the DOJ built the case against Payne, and at part at least via torture. But if his allegations are false, this case alone indicates, even if his allegations are false, this shows that the DOJ was aware of and implicated in the use of the Homan Square facility, where multiple other individuals report being physically abused and illegally detained without access to an attorney. Moreover, the Department of Justice failed to disclose to the public its awareness of and involvement with Homan Square when activists and elected officials pressured the DOJ to investigate the facility. So it's no wonder they never investigated it, because they were involved in the case in one way or another. And this is the sort of thing, guys, that really disturbs me and keeps me up at night in relation to what we're seeing from Donald Trump and the taking away of people. Right now, they're shipping them to El Salvadorian, prisons for violent gang members. But how long will it be before one of these types of facilities in Homan Square or elsewhere is used to house people who are critical of Israel? Because that's what this is all coming back to. And I mean, not to get too off track here, but that's happening in the United States. For those who think America's the land of the free and this kind of stuff will never happen, it's already happening. They already have people being rounded up, being treated like criminals, being held without access to trial, being tortured, at least mentally. The whole experience is torture, but physically in some cases. And it's not just happening in Guantanamo Bay. It's not just happening in black sites in Poland and other parts of the world. It's happening in Homan Square. And more than likely, as I said, this is not an isolated incident. There are probably other examples of this taking place. We need to push back. You need to wake up. You need to realize that these people do not have your best intentions at heart, my friends. They don't care about you. And the sooner we can recognize that, the sooner we're going to be in a better place. If we can get past the false left-right paradigm, the false binary, and actually unite. I know it seems so far away, and I really have not much hope or optimism for it. People of the left and the right and the center coming together. I know that many of you thought that that's what was happening with Trump's election, that we're building a coalition. We got Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. We're bringing together all the disaffected Democrats and others. But that is a false awakening. That's not the real awakening. The real awakening is me and you and everybody recognizing that politics isn't the answer, that politicians aren't the answer, and that the only hope of saving the United States, and not only the United States, but the world, and helping people come together to build a better world that we know is possible, the only way that's going to happen is us choosing to come together and reject politics and reject false solutions. I highly encourage you guys to check out the Exit and Build 45-day challenge, theconsciousresistance.com/EXB for Exit and Build. Check it out. Learn more about the solutions. Dive into that. Get involved in your community. Push back against tyranny when you see it. Don't just complain on the internet. Don't just think that slacktivism on the internet and tweeting or, doing this sort of thing is real work. I'm sorry, my friends. It's not. Ratioing somebody on the internet isn't a big thing. It's not a huge deal. It doesn't impact the real physical realm. Yes, we can use the internet. We can use social media. We can use these tools to reach people. But at the end of the day, we need to get out into the streets when necessary. We can't allow tyranny to rise in our own backyards. And even though I don't live in the United States full time anymore, I'm in Mexico. I go back to Texas regularly. My family's there in Texas. And what happens in the United States does impact other parts of the world. So if American citizens themselves, if the American people themselves can't stand up and say, when injustice is happening, it's wrong. It doesn't matter if it's happening to somebody who I disagree with. It doesn't matter if it's happening to somebody with a different political opinion. Wrong is wrong is wrong. And we need to stand up against it at every turn. Otherwise, there will be more black sites. There will be more people being shipped off to El Salvadorian prisons or elsewhere. And right now you might say, well, they're illegal, Derrick. I don't care about that. Or they're allegedly a gang member. I don't need to see the evidence. I'm just going to take Trump's administration's word for it. But eventually, it will be you, or it'll be somebody you care about. And then what will you do? It's the old adage that first they came for somebody I didn't care about and I did nothing. Then they came for another person I didn't care about and I did nothing. And eventually they came for me, or they came for my kind, or people who share my views. And at that point, it was too late. We cannot allow that to happen, my friend. The fact that these sort of injustices are taking place in the United States, the fact that pedophiles go free and that people who are abusing children are being allowed to get off the hook and walk freely, and that the government is rounding people up under very, little evidence, if any at all. And there's black sites in America, and we could go on, and digital IDs are coming. And where is the resistance? I don't see it. Where are all the conscious resistors? Where are the people who recognize what's happening and need and have a desire and a need and a want to stand up and to say, no, we won't take this. No, we're not going to stand by and allow the human spirit to be suppressed under this psychopathic, transhumanist, anti-human eugenicist agenda. We're going to stand up and claim our power, stand strong in our minds and our hearts, and stand together with our brothers and sisters and say that we will not give in. We will not give up, and we will not be subsumed by the AI transhumanist technocratic machine. Until that happens, my friends, it's going to keep advancing.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.